We wanted to be able to go out and speak to supporters with everything fully released and counted, and it is frustrating, to put it mildly, that even as we speak now, we don't have those counts.
I'm Julie Pace, Washington Bureau Chief for the Associated Press, and this is Ground Game. The 2020 election season finally began with caucusing in Iowa, and yet we have no results.
Apparently, they had a problem with the computer system and getting the numbers on. I think they'll be able to count them by hand, just like people used to, and then they'll get them in.
A truly epic failure for Democrats who launched this process with so much anticipation and excitement about picking their nominee to take on Donald Trump. Now the party has to wonder where they go from here. So there were a lot of scenarios that we prepared for here at the AP about the Iowa caucus results. The one scenario we didn't prepare for was having no results at all. And yet, that's where we stand right now. No results out of Iowa as of this conversation with Tom Beaumont. He is AP's national political reporter based in the great state of Iowa. How you doing, Tom?
Pretty well for 4 hours of sleep.
Good. I got about 3.5, so you beat me. You beat me by a bit. Thank you. So, Tom, what do we make of where we are right now? This is pretty extraordinary.
The first thing is it's a huge black eye for the Iowa Democratic Party. Not just the entire political world in the United States, but literally all over the world was watching for signs of what was a very competitive and kind of unusual race down the stretch, only to end in a thud, with no results now more than 12 hours after we should have expected to see some results, and no immediate indication of when there will be results, except for the party saying that they expect to have results today. But there's been no indication of exactly when.
So what do we know about what went wrong here?
The way I've been able to put it together, based on our reporting, is two major pieces. One is there was the introduction of this app, and that these caucuses are run by the state party. It's important to remember that they are not state-run elections. It's a party-run contest, and that's what distinguishes it from the New Hampshire primary, the first-in-the-nation primary. So in order to bring these into technological currency, they decided to use an app. And they didn't introduce this app to the more than 1,700, or roughly 1,700, precincts around the state until just minutes before the caucuses were going to begin. They didn't test it. And the reason that they did that, although it seems odd on its face, the reason they didn't do that, the reason they let it out so shortly before they started, was to minimize the exposure to hacking. So they just didn't want that app out there and exposed and open to potential hacking.
And it appears on that count, the party was successful. They've made clear over the last several hours that the delays that we're seeing are not the result of a hack or any kind of intrusion. But then that seemed to backfire on them because people didn't get a chance to test this. One of the things that I was hearing, Tom, last night is that, some of these caucus precincts are in pretty rural areas. You might not get great Wi-Fi in some of these places. You might not get great connectivity. How does this contribute to some of these issues that we're seeing?
Absolutely. Yeah. I would think that would be prevalent in the really deep rural pockets of the state. But the other aspect of this was once the app showed signs of problems, all of the county Democratic chairmen that were collecting the results from all of these precincts in their county were having trouble with the app. And so they went into this backup mode where they were taking phone calls from individual precincts. And in some cases, even suburban counties would have 30 precincts. So that's a chairman on the phone taking 30 calls, taking down his information, and then he has to call that information in to the state party. There's 99 counties in Iowa. And so suddenly there were 99 phone calls stacked up waiting for these people who were not staffed to take all those phone calls at the Iowa Democratic Party. And so that's where we went from the app problem to this massive slowdown delay when people were trying to run the backup through the phones.
In other words, it was chaos.
It was. It went from an app flub to a complete log jam.
Tom, stay with us. We'll be right back. So, Tom, going into the caucuses, there's always some questions about why Iowa goes first. There are always questions about, how representative the state is of the National Democratic Party, and also just the caucus process in general. What is the conversation around Iowa's unique role this morning as people are really assessing what happened here?
As I was turning from looking for results to writing a story just about that last night, my phone was getting all kinds of texts from local Iowa Democratic strategists and officials, as well as from around the country, saying, this is it for the caucuses. We'll see about that. We'll see what the state party comes up with. I will say this. The caucuses have always been a, kind of antiquated system of meetings. Like I said, they're not a state-run election. And every cycle, we seem to be moving one step further away from their relevance from 150 years ago, when it meant, farmers getting on a wagon and riding to church to talk politics with people that they wouldn't otherwise see. It just seems like this system that has tried to stay current keeps running into modernity. And this is a pretty colossal failure. And I will say this, Republicans are rallying around the state Democrats like Chuck Grassley and Joni Ernst and Governor Kim Reynolds are saying, let's see what went wrong. And, we're all in favor of keeping the caucuses first because it's in their interest to have the caucuses first if there's an open Republican caucus next time.
Fascinating to see a little Republican support for the Democrats there. Tom, we obviously don't have any results out of Iowa, but it was fascinating last night to see how the candidates were trying to spin those non-results. You were at Pete Buttigieg's election night party. How did he manage to both declare victory and acknowledge the fact that there was nothing to report?
Well, it's kind of what we feared going into it, that some of the campaigns might start reporting what they have. And in the absence of, results late at night, that's what the Buttigieg people started to do. As you know, his campaign has been very metrics-oriented, and they kicked out a bunch of details saying a certain percentage, high percentage of their precinct leaders had checked in and said they had outperformed their goals here and here. And we'll see if that starts to match up with any results that roll in. But there was that. And then on the other side, Joe Biden, who we had wondered how strong he was going to finish, and anecdotally found out he was not doing well in some precincts, seemed to call into question the validity of the results. So you're right. They're spinning results that aren't even out yet.
And let's explain to our listeners what is going on here, because the campaigns have their own data that they're collecting from these precincts as well. They have supporters that are in the room reporting back how their candidate was doing. So we're in this situation right now where the campaigns have their own unverified and often incomplete data that they're using to declare results, while the party is sitting on their data and not putting anything out, right?
Yeah. And at the moment, the state party isn't saying anything publicly. And they may be furiously tabulating right now and perhaps close to some kind of results. We just don't know.
Do you think, Tom, because we have this uncertainty about the results, because we have these questions about the process, even if the party is able to put out their data in the next day or so, does it matter? Does anyone really get momentum out of Iowa now?
I don't know. If the New Hampshire primary were tomorrow, you can just erase an entire year of campaigning in Iowa. But if they get it out and there seems to be some kind of separation between the candidates, and when I say if they get it out today, it's going to be bad for them. They're going to have a black eye. But if they're able in some way to just salvage the results and say, here's what happened, which is frankly what happened, a long time ago when we all had to wait for results to come out. Maybe there can be some momentum. Somebody can be declared a winner. I mean, ultimately, Iowa has to be able to say who won. But your point's well taken that the longer it takes, the less someone's able to do that. We remember the 2012 Republican caucuses where Mitt Romney was first declared the winner, and then days later, Rick Santorum was declared the winner, and it didn't matter because you can't put momentum back in the bottle.
This is not the first time, as you mentioned, that Iowa has had some issues with their caucus process. Tom, you mentioned a year of campaigning in Iowa. Candidates have been on the ground, staffers, volunteers have been on the ground. I was really struck in the days leading up to the caucus when I was out in Iowa by just the level of uncertainty and anxiety among Democrats in the state, even though this process feels like it has gone on for so long. How do you think this affects just the psyche of Democrats who have been waiting, frankly, for 3 years to get to this point, only to see such chaos?
I don't know. I haven't talked to any voters since last night, but it just adds to the uncertainty. It almost seems fitting, given how strange the campaign ended, with candidates being pulled out of the state to attend the impeachment trial, to the epic failure of the most trusted poll in the state just 48 hours before the caucuses, and then this. I mean, if weird things happen in threes, this certainly fits that pattern.
It has been anything but a normal Iowa caucus. But Tom Beaumont, we are always grateful for your insights on the ground in Des Moines, and especially on very little sleep. Thank you so much for being with us on Ground Game.
We'll see where it goes. Thanks, Julie.
That's it for this episode of Ground Game. Now that 2020 voting has begun, we'll be here every step of the way, giving you all the news you need twice a week. Be sure to tell a friend about us, and please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening. From the Westwood One Podcast Network.